kicking off the conference with a leading figure at the intersection of work and AI. We have Kevin Martin here today. Kevin is Chief Research Officer at the Institute for Corporate Productivity, a leading global human capital research firm. You might know them better as I4CP. Kevin advises HR leaders and corporate boards on topics such as the future of work, people strategy, and leadership effectiveness, and has also been recognized as a top HR and HR tech influencer multiple times. So his research is featured in top publications like The Economist, Forbes, Harvard Business Review, research that he will be sharing with us today. So as we dive in to the session, we're gonna go right in. No more intros. So over to you, Kevin. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Miriam, and thanks to the SpringWorks team. What I want to share with everyone is the findings I'm going to share with you and some guidance come directly out of a major study that we conducted. And we conducted this in the summer of 2023. We had a subsequent study that we did in the winter of 2023-2024, and we're about to launch another study on this. So at I4CP, we are really committed to ensuring that the organizations that we work with, the HR leaders, are fully prepared to help lead the AI conversations at their organizations. Now, what I wanted to share, for those of you who are unfamiliar with I4CP, if you hear me reference what high-performance organizations do, I want you to know that in our global studies, what we do is run a correlation. It's not causal, it's correlates, but what we're trying to figure out is, do the practices that differentiate high-performance organizations, those with the greatest five-year track record in these 4 market indicators, do they actually have a positive correlation or a negative correlation to these market indicators? And what we'll also share with you are some next practices. So next practices are practices that distinguish high-performance organizations, have very strong positive correlation to market performance, but are not widely adopted, typically about 20%. So here we go. Question, we're going to get you using your polling right away. I'm really curious to know, how AI ready is your organization's HR function? Now, if you're a consultant on this call that is serving the HR community, feel free to answer on behalf of the community that you're answering or that you're servicing. But I'm curious to know what you're thinking here. Now, let me share with you as we're gathering your responses. And there's 3 questions, very easy to answer here. But you're going to see some very strong evidence that I'm going to share with you in just a little bit as to why HR's AI readiness is critical to the organization's readiness for the future of work. And how what we see, unfortunately, is too much direct correlation between HR's AI readiness and what they're hearing from senior leaders as regard to the organization's approach to it. So with that, we're going to take a look real quick. So right now we've got almost a third that right now aren't ready, okay? And we've got about 25% that are preparing to experiment or use in the future. So let's say 50% are not there yet, but planning to experiment. And we've got about 40% that are experimenting or using. Okay. Now, a year ago, what I would say is that 39% that's experimenting or using was closer to 25%. So we've seen some good adoption over the past year, but for those that aren't ready or are planning to, you better get ready now. And so let me just share with you why. So let's look at the other ones real quick. I want to see this. Has your HR organization received training? No. But we're planning to. Excellent. Glad to see that. Yes, 13%. Way to go. I'm super stoked for you. And the other 31% No plans that you're aware of. Tell them, get with the program, people. And is your function represented on your AI Governance Council? I'm not surprised to see a third don't knowing. You should know this. And 51% saying no. That's very scary. You're going to see it in a moment. The 18% yes. So, whoo, okay. We've got a long way to go here, and this is going to help you progress. So let's move on. Now, why does this matter a lot? First up, I want to share with you data from I4CP and others. The first is a stat from PwC. This came out of their 2024 Global CEO Survey that was launched at the World Economic Forum. And you can see that 70% of CEOs at that time said they agreed that generative AI would significantly change the way their organization creates, derives, delivers value. Okay? Remember that 7 in 10 CEOs saying it's going to significantly change in the next 3 years how they create, drive, deliver value. Now, this data point came from a survey we did of corporate board directors. Now, these are people who serve on private and public company boards. We conducted this in December of 2023, so 7 months ago. And we asked them, how confident are you that the management of just one of the company's boards that you're serving on is articulating a vision for how generative AI may affect that company? Only 16% said very confident. So what's happening here is there's a big chasm. 7 in 10 CEOs say that they believe Gen AI is going to significantly change the way their company delivers value. Only 16% of corporate boards are hearing them articulate how. So if board directors aren't hearing it, the workforce isn't hearing it. It's going to create fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the workforce, but also a very scary statistic is our research found that regardless of your company's policy on the use of Gen AI, 2/3 of HR leaders believe their people are using it anyway. So if you're not shaping how they use it and governing how they use it, you're creating tremendous risk at the organization. And then this was just 2 months ago from Microsoft. Microsoft did their own study, and they found that 60% of leaders say their organization lacks a clear AI strategy. So this means, the title of my talk is, forget about use cases, HR. Focus on AI readiness within HR. And I'm going to leave with you today certain questions that any HR leader, if you're an HR leader, you can ask this of the corporate leadership team to help them start thinking more systematically about the organizational impact of AI. If you're not an HR leader, you can use this within the HR function. How can you better systematically prepare the HR function in this AI world of work? Now, in our own research, we created a maturity model based upon the answers that we collected from over, close to 1,500 respondents around the world when we did our big study. Most of the people fit into the AI Laggards category. AI Laggards were denoted by three core aspects. One is that the leaders, their organizational leaders, people responded and said, I have no idea what our approach to generative AI is. I haven't heard anything from our organizational leaders. Now, that's very scary. AI inquirers where their organizational leaders were exploring their use, but largely in a wait and see. In other words, they were taking a very cautious approach. You know what? We think AI, or Gen AI in particular, is going to be important to us, but we just don't know how yet. We're trying to figure that out. Then there were AI innovators, and this was about only 13% of our sample. These were where the organizations were taking a very thoughtful approach. We've made it safe for people to experiment and use AI. We're training people on what Gen AI, I'm particularly talking about generative AI, what it is, what it isn't, how it can be used internally and making it safe for people to use it. Or they were saying, we're doing all that, go, experiment, do it. Now, when that happens, there's all kinds of good downstream effects. You'll see in a moment when I show you this other framework. But what we're seeing here is when how the business communicates about generative AI. In other words, we're a change-ready organization. This is new change. We're going to embrace it. We're going to be very careful with it. In other words, it's not the wild, wild west here, and not everyone can use it for every reason because it's very dangerous. But we're going to make it safe for you to use it. We're going to train you on how to use it, etc. Then what happens is HR is on it. They're training themselves. They're experimenting with it. And when they do, there's tremendous workforce readiness that's getting to be the case. So let me show you this. These are 9 talent practices, specific talent practices that we see that are really what we found is that of the AI innovators in our research, 7 of these 9 practices were already put into play at these AI innovators. 1 out of 9 of these on average were put into play at AI inquirers. None of these practices were in motion at AI Laggards. So think about it. Implementing an AI strategic plan or framework, that means a governance framework. What does it mean at our company? How can you use it? Who's allowed to use it? Where do you use it? What kind of data is allowed to go into it? That's a plan or strategic plan or framework. Those are very, very important. Going right below it, developing workers to effectively leverage generative AI. There's a big financial institution we work with. I was just meeting with their HR leadership team last month. They had just rolled out generative AI training for everyone in their company, including their executive team and their board of directors. And when you complete that training and you take a validation test, you get a badge. That badge allows you to go into their internal large language model and start experimenting with it. That's a very thoughtful and strategic approach to allowing people to go about that. Ensuring employees have a secure environment for experimentation. So what this would mean is creating or either having access to large language models that are secure for your company, or perhaps your company has created a large language model that's secure. So I'm thinking about another organization that we work with very closely, Citi. In their learning function, they created their own and they had permission company-wide, right? Through data governance, et cetera. But they created an internal language model that they used, built in, put data into that, trained their team on how to use it, and gave them access to it to start experimenting with it. Now, what's nice about that versus using a publicly available large language model like ChatGPT 3 or 3.5 is that you all know that if you put company information into that, it's now in the public domain. It's going to feed other language models. You don't want to ever put company information into something like that. And so these are aspects. These are all practices that distinguish the best. The one here that I really want to call out is deconstructing job roles impacted by generative AI. So a company that we're familiar with, IKEA, started looking and saying, you know what, we know that customer service agents, that job is going away and it's going to be done by AI-generated chatbots going forward. But they didn't want to lose all those workers. They didn't want to just let them go. So what they did is they deconstructed that role and found out that there were certain capabilities within their customer call agents that made them naturally ready to take on a new role at their company, which was going to be around these design consultants. So they trained people on how to be design consultants, upskilled them for it, and over 8,000 of those call center reps now became design consultants that were billable by the hour, adding more strategic value to their business, and were in roles that were newly created. So they were really relevant going forward. Now, let me stop here for a moment. I want to see if anyone from the SpringWorks team says there's an important question in the chat that we need to answer before I move on.
Nope, not any questions right now, Kevin.
Okay, Miriam, here we go, team. This is good stuff right here. This is a sequential equation model we built on our research. Very important for you to understand what this means. So if you start to the right, starting to the right is the critical piece. What's the outcome we're looking to achieve here? These organizations want to execute strategy. They want to create competitive advantage. They want to deliver high shareholder or market value. Everyone does. Well, what we found in our research is that each of those 9 practices that I just showed you, each of them on their own have strong positive correlation to the market performance index that we track. 5-year revenue growth goals, profitability, customer satisfaction, market share growth, etc. Each of those 9 strategies do, talent practices. However, what we found is critical is when HR is invited to be part of AI governance, general AI governance, as part of, let's say, an AI governance council at the company or the enterprise, when HR is a part of that, the talent strategies are much more likely to be in effect. But what was critical to getting HR invited into that AI governance committee or council was HR's ability to demonstrate its AI readiness. Its ability to demonstrate its AI readiness is based upon their training on generative AI. So for the majority of you, 51% who said, I haven't been trained yet on generative AI, go get training on your own then. It's all over the place. We've created training for our member organizations to help HR get equipped to learn what generative AI is. Do that for yourselves if the company's not providing that. Because what that does is it allows you to understand what it can do, what it can't do. When that happens, you can start looking at your own role within HR and saying, you know what are the problems that get in my way of getting my work done well? And when you disaggregate your role into different work components, you might look and say, generative AI, I'm going to experiment with and see if it can help me do this better. Or you can start even looking and saying, what are the business problems? And this is key. This is why I call it, don't focus on use cases, focus on AI or HR's AI readiness. Well, the question you always should be asking is not what can we use generative AI for? The question is what's the business problem? Or what's the employee experience barrier that we need to solve for? And when you focus on that, you break that down and you understand what generative AI is, now you can look and say, this might be a really good experiment for us to be able to break through that bottleneck there or that barrier. But HR's AI readiness is typically only there when the business is saying, hey, go for AI, we're for it, we're making it safe to experiment, etc. So my advice to everyone here is this: if your leaders are not communicating a message to your business on its focus for AI, what it means to the organization, or that we encourage the experimentation with it, then you need to start learning about it yourselves safely. You need to experiment with it yourselves safely. Work with IT, work with product, work with marketing. They're probably already using it anyway. And figure out what it is and how to experiment with it. Have HR leadership team meetings where everyone is assigned for a given week to come in and share an example of what they learned it was used for, and how they believe it can be used within the function. And that's how some of the best HR teams are really building out their knowledge. So that, I hope, is helpful to everyone. And let me leave you with this. This is a very, very important model. The importance of it is 2 things. 1, it's incredibly simple. 2, it's incredibly empirical and powerful. In other words, we have over 50 years worth of research at I4CP. And all of that research shows us that high performance organizations excel when it comes to the people side of their business organizations and mastering the intersectionality. In other words, these 5 elements, they manage them as a system. In other words, when there is a change to one, there are changes to the other. And what I want to show you is this. Think about generative AI. I just showed you earlier, 7 in 10 CEOs believe it's going to dramatically shift how their company creates, delivers, and derives value. However, most of them cannot articulate how. So here are questions that you should be asking either of the leadership team or of those that you support or within the HR function to help get that clarity. Let's shift this. Again, this model is powerful because at any strategic shift, you can apply this. How can generative AI give us unique market advantage? In other words, can it help us accelerate our strategy? Can it help us advance in a capability we didn't have before? How can it make us susceptible to competitors? Maybe we were really strong in providing white glove customer support, but now generative AI, like IKEA, is going to be able to do that themselves. So how can it make us susceptible? How about from a strategy standpoint? How can Gen AI impact our strategy going forward? And have we communicated the vision? From a leadership standpoint, how will our leaders embrace change and support the experimentation and implementation of generative AI? I just shared with you why that's so critical. From a talent perspective, what are we going to do to attract and upskill for AI-ready talent? Not everyone needs to be AI-ready, but your current workforce, what do they need to know about AI in order to work better with it and make it a partner to them? What are the policies that we need to put out there to make it safe for use? And then finally, culture. Will our culture support the talent that we need that's AI-ready, or will it just spit it out because we're just not ready as a business? And so these are all questions you need to ask. These will help you with HR's AI readiness and your own AI readiness. And again, don't focus on use case. Ask yourself, what are the business problems and employee experience problems that you're facing as an organization? Disaggregate that and then figure out how can or if generative AI can help. Thanks for your time. Hopefully you found this helpful.